Hey, Neil McDonald here. We're going to get started in just a second. Let me just make sure I have my ducks in a row and I can do a smooth sailing right through this LinkedIn Live. Thanks so much for showing up. By the way, if you're not tracking my post in addition to LinkedIn Lives, make sure you do that. Go over to my LinkedIn profile. Right on the profile at the top under the banner is a bell for notification. If you click that, you'll be notified when I do post. And almost every single one of my posts are related to that activity. Hold on one second. Just making sure somebody's giving me a little technical. Okay, let's get started. Somebody's giving me a technical thing. But anyways, I was saying I put a lot of good stuff. 99% of what I put out there is federal government related posts. So example, strategic documents, org charts, etc. State Department just dropped their new $8 billion IT IDIQ. So I'm going to consolidate some of that information and put it out there so it's easy for you to find. But make sure you find that stuff. And let me turn off this fun little scroll. Sometimes I remember and sometimes I forget, but now it's off and we're good to go. I'm going to get started here. I'm Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to my LinkedIn Live, where I discuss process and procedures for you to achieve success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal marketplace as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting, it's not a secret, it's just a process. And that process goes from A to Z. And if you follow the process, then you will achieve the success you're hoping to get out of that. Part of the process is having meetings and knowing what to say to agencies and teaming partners. And so today I'm going to talk about the value of call plans. I'm going to talk about how to recruit the other person that you're meeting with into your goals. And then I'm going to give you examples for 4 different types of people that you might meet with. So give you real world examples as you move forward. If you have questions about this topic as I go through, if I don't touch on everything, feel free to put them in the chat. I definitely get the comments generally within the same day. So put them in there and I'll try to get back to you. Before we start, I do want to ask you to help me remember you. I want to be advocating for small businesses when I'm out there talking to people, but I need to know who you are. So help me know who you are by putting your company name and your core competency, 2 or 3 words, into the chat. Also, this is a community, so engage inside the community and let others know who you are. If you're open to connections, let us know that. But either way, make it easy for me and your buyers to know who you are by just putting your company name and your core competency. While you're doing that, right before I dive into the meat of today's training, I do want to highlight a quick shout out to HTA Technology Consulting or Security Consulting. Doug Keaton's in here, and he's going to be helping me today in the training. But he's not only a member of the community, but he's a really active member of the training involved. So giving me feedback, and I really appreciate that because it makes it better for you. Do me a favor, reach out to him, connect with him. He's open to connections, connect with his company. So you're following on LinkedIn and get to know him. Every day I'm going to try to sit there and highlight somebody different or maybe a couple of people who are in that same group as a way to build our community. Because one of the things that I really like seeing after the training is you connecting with somebody else in the community and going off and figuring out how to develop a relationship that might work for both your successes. That's exciting for me to watch and see happen in our community. So use the chat for that as I go along and teach you. Speaking of water, I'm going to get to my fire hose way of delivering training. Today, I want to really drive into federal sales and what do you say? I appreciate that the feedback I get helps me sometimes with topics like this. Last week, somebody was asking me that exact question. Well, I get the meeting, but what do I say in the meeting? You know, they describe this pain that they feel are, they're lost, right? A feeling of being lost or unprepared or even overwhelmed. And they attribute that all to not knowing what to say. I'm going to talk to you today about the solution for that, or a solution, part of the solution for you as you move forward. But it really comes down to, in my opinion, having a clear objective when you go into a meeting. You know what you want to get out of the meeting, using a call plan that drives the meeting and leads all of your conversation towards that objective that we just defined, right? And then the last thing is I want you to keep in mind that you must, in order to achieve success, give without expectation. And so part of giving is sharing your subject matter expertise with the other company that you're meeting with or the buyer that you're potentially meeting with. Don't hold things back, right? If you don't hold things back and you give without expectation, it'll come back. That's just how life works, right? And if you do these things I'm going to suggest to you today and you begin to develop the skills around it and get better at that skill, you're going to start having more meetings that move your sale forward, right? Move an opportunity through that capture pipeline in the direction you want, right? Forward. And these are what I call successful, not great meetings, right? A successful meeting achieves a defined objective that moves the sale forward. A great meeting is one where they loved me and you and I loved them. We had great conversation. Everybody seemed to like each other and we all agreed we should get back together someday. Like, great. That's a great meeting, right? But it's not successful. In sales, we must measure steps going forward. And that's what I want you to keep in mind. Have successful meetings. I do want to switch over to one graph really quick. Some of you might be familiar with it and others less so. So this adoption bell curve, one of the things to keep in mind is I described when you're working with people and you're having meetings or you're reaching out and doing sales, whatever you're doing, some people will do what you want, some people won't. And I like to say some will, some won't, so what, right? Don't let this some won'ts control your feelings. And this bell curve, what it's showing you is if you reach out to 100 people to try to ask them for a meeting, or if you have 100 meetings, will they go where you want to go? Well, half of them right here, the late majority laggards, just aren't going to go that way. And when you begin to understand that sales is a numbers game, a lot of things are a numbers game, right? Numbers are not a bad thing. These are metrics, and you define a good metric. I'm going to use a sports analogy, and I'm going to totally butcher it. But basically, a great baseball player only hits the ball, let's say 30% of the time, right? Somebody correct me in the chat. But my point is, they don't hit it 100% of the time. That doesn't make a great baseball player. And it's the same thing here. You don't have to hit 100% of the time. You don't have to land 100% of the meetings. You don't have to have 100% of your meetings go great. You just need to pay attention to that. Out of 100, 13 and or 16% of your meetings, or 16 people, will really be a fit for you. And those are the ones where you should expect the sale to move forward. And then you can have that bonus part of early majority, 34%. I don't want to dive too far into this because I could do 30 minutes just on the bell curve, but keep in mind, some will, some won't. So what? Okay. So speaking of so what, let me switch slides to my next slide. I've got a couple of slides that just guide me. They're not beautiful, so I don't hand them out, et cetera. They're just notes for me to go forward. So the first thing I want to talk to you about on, what to say in a meeting. What do you say to the other person? Well, it begins before you ever have the meeting, and you need to prepare for a meeting. I said this yesterday that failing to plan is planning to fail, right? And so here I'm talking about how do you plan to succeed? Well, use a call plan. And I've talked about this before. A call plan template is what I use constantly. And actually, maybe in the chat, Doug, you might put in a link to the video, the video number 9 in a replay. You can go watch that and see how I fill out a call plan. But and if you'd like a copy of the call plan template, put that in the chat. But in a call plan, the value of using a call plan is that it allows you to control a meeting for their success and your success, right? Whenever I talk about controlling a meeting, I don't mean it in some bad way. Hey, I control the meeting, I get everything I want. That's win-lose, right? Stephen Covey talks about win-lose, or lose-win, or lose-lose. Win-win is where you want to be. You want everybody to win. And when you control the meeting for their success and yours, it's good. I've often walked into project management meetings and people just sit around. We all know we need to be there, but no one knows who's in charge or what's going on. And I'm the type of person that if I don't see somebody in charge, I will take charge. And if somebody takes charge, I'm in heaven, because now I'm going to be in a good meeting, but I don't have to do the lead. And it's the same thing when you have a meeting. If you want the meeting to go the way you'd like, if you'd like to have a good conversation that leads to a successful meeting, take control of it by creating a call plan that guides your efforts in that meeting. The second reason a call plan is really valuable is it keeps you from straying from your purpose and your objective. If my objective is an NDA on a particular opportunity, let's say the State Department Evolve one I just said, right? I don't want to let myself be distracted in other areas. I was in a meeting once where I was saying that we were focused on DoD opportunities, and the other party kept trying to pull the meeting over to DHS and HHS opportunities. Oh, they're great stuff over there. I'm sure they're great, but that's not the purpose of this meeting. And in fact, that's not even the purpose of our company. Our company is DoD focused. Having that call plan allowed us to just kind of keep bringing it back, not in any kind of bad way, but we just redirected ourselves and the other party back in. And that's what you can do as well, is you keep reminding yourself, what is the purpose of my meeting and what is the objective? What am I trying to get out of it? And so the last thing I already alluded to, the value of a call plan, and to me, the most important thing is that it moves the sale forward. If you have a call plan for a meeting, at the top, it says your primary and secondary objective. Primary objective is the main thing we want to get out of this. If I'm meeting with a teaming partner, it might be an NDA on an opportunity. I believe that NDAs are the first written agreement that we have a relationship that we're building here. If we don't write something down like that, or if we don't move forward in a certain way, then to me, that sale's not actually moving forward. And so a call plan, when you write the objective down, you're stating what is that activity, the objective, right? But what is that activity that will move the sale forward? And that call plan helps move it forward. So again, if you want to copy the call plan template, let me know and I will send that to you in messaging. The next thing that I want to talk about is how to recruit the other person for success in a meeting. And to me, what this means is I'm going into a meeting, right? You and I are going into a meeting. And we might be a little nervous. I talked to you about maybe feeling a little overwhelmed or unprepared. Sometimes we smalls, if we meet with a large, we feel like we're meeting with our big sister or big brother or something. Well, when you go in, part of the way you can sit there and stay in that control that I talked about in using that call plan is to get that other person committed or engaged in your success. Right. So sometimes we go in and we just let the meeting go where it's going to go, and wherever it goes, it goes. And that other person, they don't have any particular big plan necessarily, but they might hijack that meeting and take it in a whole different direction. An example that I heard very recently from one of you in the community is where you go in and all of a sudden the other person is asking you about how big are you? How many people are in your company? How much money are you making? And I'm actually doing a whole training on Friday about that, because it's how do you overcome objections or resistance like that. We should be talking about data analytics and artificial intelligence with the Department of Navy or something. We shouldn't be talking about all these one-off things. And if you can recruit them into the purpose, then you will have a chance of a meeting driving towards that objective that you were talking about. So I wanted to talk with you briefly about human nature, right? And this is my way of describing it, and try to roll with this a little bit, because I might butcher it a teeny bit. But one of the things I want you to understand is that people, by our very nature, want to feel powerful and in control. We want to feel like we're in control of our lives. And by the way, I mean this subconsciously, not, I don't walk into a meeting and go, I want to be powerful. I want to be in control. There's people like that. They're arrogant. And I'm actually not talking about them, because those are easy for you to identify. But understanding that all of us want to feel in control of our destiny and what's going on with us, et cetera. And we can do this in two ways, in my opinion. We can do this by holding another person down, or we can do this by helping them up, right? Two easy ways to look at how I might feel powerful and in control, holding somebody down or helping them up. And the reason this is really important is because when I go into a meeting, when you go to a meeting, keep this in mind, that there's this underlying need for being powerful and control. What we need to do is to make sure they don't go with the one we don't want, which is trying to hold us down. How many people do you have in your company? How much money are you making? Have you done this? Do you know this contract vehicle? Asking us all these questions that are designed to be more confrontational, even if they don't mean it to be that way. It's more interrogating the other person. That's not good for a meeting. We want to help them help us, which makes them feel powerful, right? If you roll with that thread, if we can get them to help us, they will feel good about themselves. They can, and that's important, right? When you know that, then the activity I'm about to describe makes sense. I want to give you an example, two examples. One's a really quick one, and then the other's a bigger one. First example is just think about in a car. When we get into a car with other people, only one person is control. We need somebody to take control. And we're okay with that. It doesn't make them better than us, and it doesn't make them worse. It's just, hey, you got the lead. You're controlling how fast we go, whether we stop, turn left, turn right. You're controlling that. We accept that. And we actually like that because it means I can drink my coffee and read a book or look out the window or whatever, right? And sometimes we feel control in the back seat, but that's not the same thing. Dale Carnegie wrote a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And if you haven't read this book, I encourage you to read it. I read it at least every couple of years, if not every year. I take that book in the audio format now because I can take it with me on long jogs or walks or whatever. But in there, if you're talking about trying to be a good salesperson, and if you're having any meetings and you're in this live today or this live training, then you want to be a good salesperson. You want to have good meetings. This book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, will make you better at that. He'll teach you skills, and he'll talk about the why behind a lot of what I describe at a much more involved manner. But he gives this example that I really liked. And actually, oh, there you go. Doug threw it in there for me. So in the chat, you see somebody just put in, Doug just put in how to win friends and influence people so that you can remember it. Give that a thumbs up if you believe in this idea of continuous learning through other people's reading. But I wanted to talk to you about this story and with AT&T that he talked about, right? With Dale Carnegie was a salesperson with AT&T, and they brought him in because they had this huge customer problem. Customer was pissed off at AT&T. They were going to cut their contract with AT&T and go over to somebody else. And this was one of AT&T's largest customers, had offices all around the country. And this customer was really furious because they felt like they were getting a bad deal from AT&T. And so they sent Dale in because everybody else had kind of failed to even get any traction. And Dale was able to secure a meeting with the president of this company, went in, and you can listen to the story in a much longer way, but went in and got a meeting to try to go in and talk with him and convince him to stay. But when he got there, the guy was so furious that when Dale sat down, he just started laying into him. And he was supposed to have a 15-minute meeting. That meeting lasted an hour and a half. And for the entire hour and a half, that guy just laid into him. And then at the end of the time, he got up and was getting ready to leave. And the guy the president of the company scheduled another meeting the next day and said, why don't you come back? We'll keep talking about this. And the same thing happened the next day, except for towards the end, the guy began to shift because all Dale was doing was listening to this man's concerns. He was expressing concerns about maybe the quality of service, the billing, why don't we get a discount? All these things. He's just going off. Some of his concerns had nothing to do with AT&T, and they were just pulling him out of the air. But what Dale gave him was this person who was there to listen. And so at first, this man felt powerful about being able to finally lay into AT&T through Dale. I got somebody who's in charge. I can lay into him. But as he began to shift, and Dale was there as a cooperative participant, he began to understand that and maybe feel a little bit more in control of himself, right? Partly what he was doing was unprofessional. Let's not deny that, right? But as he began to see Dale's willingness to listen, he began to listen to Dale and really begin to see that Dale and AT&T wanted to make it right. What can we do to make it right? Long story short, they walked away. They were able to make it right and move forward. And the reason I bring this up is because it's that instinct of people wanting to feel powerful or helpful. If you keep that in mind, you will remember that when you go into a meeting, you're not just trying to dominate the meeting and get in as much as you can and get out. You want to go into a meeting and seek to understand, not to quote too many different books, right? But Stephen Covey talks about seeking first to understand, then to be understood. And if you keep that in mind, I said this earlier about reference basically like a giver's gain, give without expectation. When you do that, you will have far more successful meetings with a call plan that guides you in the direction, right? And so moving more tactically into the meeting that you're in, one of the ways that you can get control of a meeting right away and you can recruit that other person to be part of the meeting success, is to share with them a purpose, right? I have an objective and I keep that to myself. I want to get assigned NDA or something, right? But I share a purpose. My purpose is I want to understand more about your business. I want to give you a little bit of an introduction of mine, but primarily I'm here to talk about your, where you are in data analytics or data as a strategy for your command. I'd like to explore that more. Get them to agree that that is the purpose of the meeting. So many of us don't start the meeting by saying, hey, John, in my mind, the purpose of this meeting is to do this. Is that okay with you? Do you want to add anything to that? And by doing that, they've agreed to go on the journey you just defined. And one of the ways that I bring them on that journey is I kind of hold up my call plan or mentally hold it up by describing it, saying, hey, I've got a call plan that I'm using. I really wanted to make sure I maximize the value of our meeting together. And so I've got 7 questions I'm using throughout this meeting to drive it forward. Okay, so that's how you recruit them in. Let me give you some examples of the right thing to say depending on 4 different type of people you might meet. You might meet with a contracting officer, you might meet with a small business specialist or a program office person, or you might meet with a large prime. So I describe when you're preparing a call plan to use spin selling as a methodology for developing questions. Spin Selling is a book by Neil Rackman, and it's my favorite for all the sales studying I've ever done or methodologies I've used. Neil Rackman's Spin Selling is one I always come back to because SPIN stands for situation, problem, implication, and needs payoff. And you can read the book and find out more about it or go watch another video of mine. But the idea is when you're meeting with a contracting officer, you want to be asking more situational questions. The contracting officer is not really going to be knowledgeable about the need of the government, right? They'll be knowledgeable about the requirement, but to me, that is still a situational or factual set of questions. It's the program office who describes the needs. When I say needs, I mean implied needs, explicit needs. What are the problems around it? That's different than whatever's in the PWS, which is a salesy thing. But so the contracting officer, you want to talk about spin selling and ask them questions that are factual. One question I might ask a contracting officer that I think is a good one for me to get the conversation going where I want is I'll ask them about the acquisition roadmap or the acquisition lifecycle for your command. So an example is I go to somebody in NAVC and I say, hey, I know in the federal government, basically the acquisition goes like this, but I was doing work with USDA and they had this huge, beautiful roadmap of their acquisition lifecycle that was unique to them based on the general federal acquisition approach. What's it like for NAVC? Can you describe like how does an idea go from, or how does a requirement go from an idea to award? Could you describe that for me a little bit? By having them do that, I now have them teaching me what's going on. And then I can begin to ask questions later on about opportunities about, I think this opportunity is at this stage based on what you were talking about. Is that correct? Or, where is that? Now I can expand on it. But that one question is a great question for me with contracting officers is initially building the relationship, asking them about the acquisition lifecycle. The second one is small business specialists, right? Some of the questions you might ask them. First one is, I want to make sure they're actually tracking the opportunity I'm interested in, but are they seeing enough interest on the opportunity I'm looking at? So if I looked at Evolve at a State that I talked about, that $8 billion IT IDIQ, I might ask the small business specialist tracking that, are you seeing enough interest from small businesses that there's going to be set aside pools for SDVO or woman-owned firms? It's a way to get them talking about that kind of activity. And it allows me, by the way, when I do a call plan and I've got 7 questions, the idea of those questions is not like a detective, but it's to guide me to go down a path. I want to ask questions related to this one theme question. So another question I might ask small business is, what do you need from me to make an introduction? So I got a small business specialist that's in this community and very helpful to smalls, Matt Burkett out of Naval Surface Warfare Center, Crane, over in Crane, Indiana. Anyways, long story short, he'll make an introduction to the CTO. I might ask him, what do you need from me before you're willing to make that introduction, right? Small business specialists are liaisons back and forth between the buyer and the seller, but they don't want to just be sending us sellers to anybody downstream. They do want to do a little bit of due diligence to make sure that we are a right fit for their buyers. They're willing to help. They just don't want to waste program office time, which makes sense. And so let's talk about program office. In program offices, I expand on spin selling, and now I'm going into the P and the I, the problem and the implication questions. So the problem questions are where I'm digging into, what are you guys running into if there's a problem related to construction? Well, construction's outside my realm, but data. Let's talk about data for a second, because I can sit there and talk about, hey, I was reading an article and saw that you guys have like 200 different data sources. What challenges are you running into to pulling that data together? I might ask, what are you looking to accomplish by when you pull it together, and to be able to maybe serve it up to others within your command or your agency? Implication questions tend to be, well, if this is the problem here, that data is hard to pull together into one repository, well, who else is being impacted by this challenge? And I heard an example out of a company called Uncommon, and you can go watch it on their LinkedIn page, but they put a study out about something they're doing with the Port of Long Beach, where they basically pulled in all this data. And now it's not just the Port of Long Beach who can use this data, but Port of Long Beach can serve it up to shipping companies like trucks and whoever, right? That they can start improving their process by using this data. That's an implication question. When you begin to see that and know that, you can expand it pretty far. So Uncommon, by the way, is UNCOMN. So the last one is large primes. If I'm going into a large prime, I want to make sure I'm addressing their concerns. I've talked about this a lot of times, that larges have a concern with smalls, risks, right? All these risks, they're not even thinking about the technical yet. Can you pay your people? If we give you a contract, can you pay your people long enough to keep them employed in order for us to get paid from the government and then pay you, right? They're concerned about that. Are you able to hire your own people? We've given a contract out to a subcontractor before, only to have them turn around and ask us to help them hire people. It's like, well, no, we're hiring our own people. You small, you need to hire your own. And so they have these concerns. The more you begin to learn what concerns larges have, when you go in, you can head them off. And Friday, I'll talk more about that. That's overcoming objectives, right? Or objections. But you also want to ask them questions like learning what they like in a small, right? So when you work with small businesses, it isn't just about the fact that you have to give a certain percentage away. What do we bring that you find really helpful? Maybe it's innovation. Maybe it's our ability to be flexible and respond at the speed of relevancy, to use a term that's going on. And then something else you want to talk about is what specifically can I bring, right? And I'm sorry, don't talk to them about it, but know this yourself. Can you bring a skill set that's unique? Bernadette was on this in our community, and she does AI and emerging technologies. Well, she does that very tightly, and I see, would that be helpful in the Navy with some of the largest that are there? Well, they'd love the fact that she comes from a very mature set of agencies, and they'd like to bring that forward. So having that skill set, or maybe somebody is in the Navy already. John is on this community and does cyber very tightly in Air Force. Well, that person brings a relationship with the Air Force. They know everybody in the Air Force and who does stuff. Well, a large would value that kind of knowledge. Sometimes they have to pay a lot of money for that. If they're able to team up for that, that's entertaining to them or attractive to them. So you want to think about what's in it for that large when you're creating these questions and you're getting ready to talk about the value that you bring. Don't just rattle off every feature of your company, everything about your company, but really be focused on driving forward on a point. Okay, so we're blowing through really fast, getting to the end. I like ending on time. Remember, put a comment if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them, follow up. Today, we talked about what we can do to prepare, and then in a meeting to have more successful meetings, as well as kind of what to say in there to these people. So if you found it valuable, give it a thumbs up. Take a look at the different video training we're doing the rest of the week. Tomorrow is one on C parts. So if you already got contracts in there, I'm going to talk about C parts for people who are prime and if you're a sub. So I want to touch on that topic. Remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you at the next video.